All right, so I'll just get started. I think I am recording. Looks like I am. Okay, so hello, everybody. If you're listening to this, uh, I'm probably on a flight to Milwaukee for our organizers conference for People's Action. So unfortunately, wasn't able to join uh, this evening. Uh, but you've got this video of me walking through what our goals and our mission will be for the 2018, well, year 2018. So I want to walk y'all through a brief presentation about what we're up to in 2018, a very important year, and I'll go ahead and get started. All right, so let's go. So first and foremost, want to talk about just the mission of our organization as a whole. We don't talk about this probably often enough with like with members of the organization, but like our founding mission, at least I'd call it, because we've had different versions of it, has been a mission of building power for working families. So building the political and economic power to determine our own destinies here in the state of Maryland as working class people. That is one of the central focuses of Progressive Maryland, and we're going to be moving from that position in 2018 and from a place of building power for working class people. So we also want to get back to the fundamentals of why we exist as an organization. And in fact, this is to some degree why many of your chapters exist as well, perhaps. But we think about four basic tenets of what we aim to do as an organization and that make up our purpose as Progressive Maryland and why we exist. So first, we want to create an economy that is accountable to and driven by the needs of working class Marylanders. Then we want to also win the hearts and minds of Maryland residents for our kind of progressive governing vision. Next, we want to elect progressive leaders for state and local offices who will enact a progressive platform for Maryland. And then we also want to create a bottom-up grassroots political power structure in which elected leaders are held accountable to working class Marylanders. So this is like these are the outcomes that we seek to have happen as an organization as a result of the work that we do together, from the members, from the chapter organizations, affiliated organizations of Progressive Maryland. We're driving towards these four central outcomes. Now, of course, there could be, broader things that may not be listed here, but these are like four very big, important reasons why we exist and what we're trying to achieve in the world. Creating an economy that works for more people and is controlled by regular, everyday people. We want to change hearts and minds as an organization, and we want to elect leaders who will be accountable to us. So that's some of the basics there. So that ties into our strategies for change. So, and I'll go through each of them in a second with different cool slides. So our strategies for change include relational organizing, public pressure for system change, training and coaching, shifting the dominant narrative, and winning governing power. So that you could see how these relate to the previous slides as well, or the previous slide rather as well. If I go back, you see the connection here, about how we're going to get these things accomplished. That's what these strategies are meant to produce, is the outcomes I was just talking about. So let's go into relational organizing. So that is the organizing that we do with the chapter organizations, the organizing that you all do, frankly, as leaders within chapters, and the organizing that our affiliated organizations do as well. We're working to build strong local relationships within organizations to make our organizations more powerful and able to produce change. This comes from an understanding that, you know, people are motivated to act together not only by the cause, but the connections and the solidarity between one another. That is what makes long-lasting movements. That is what makes the fabric of our organization so that they can continue moving forward. So we have been working over the past year or two to help develop local chapter organizations and communities across the state in order to create a strong social fabric within our organization of members and volunteers who will work together to achieve the outcomes that we just talked about. So that means that instead of just being committed only to action, we're also trying to build engagement, because we understand that we have one of the largest lists of any organization in the state, quite frankly. Some of you all may have seen it. Like, we have over 100,000 contacts in our database of Marylanders who have supported various progressive causes in the past in Maryland. But that list means nothing without a strong, committed group of people who are willing to take action to create the changes that we're talking about creating. So this right here describes our circles of engagement. So we're looking to bring people from our communities into our crowds. That's like getting them on our list and getting them somewhat engaged with us, into a congregation, but joining the organization, getting committed, so beginning to actually take action with our organizations, our chapters, etc., and then building out a core group of leaders within Progressive Maryland. And Beth, would you mind muting? I'm recording this for later. All right, so next, so that's the way that we organize. So we also seek to create policy change. So that's our point on public pressure for systemic change. So next year, there's going to be important legislation in Annapolis and across counties across the state of Maryland. So we've got a few specific things, including the Fight for 15, in which there will be a $15 minimum wage legislation introduced in Annapolis next year. To single-payer healthcare is a possibility of being introduced in Annapolis next year. So next year we'll plan during the legislative session to push forward an agenda that creates the type of state that we want to see. And I also failed to mention that there'll be legislation to create pretrial reform in our state, for more justice for people who are not yet convicted of a crime and facing our criminal justice system. So that's a very important pillar of what we'll be doing in 2018. 2018, we're also going to continue our training and strategic support for chapters and members throughout the state. We want to roll out, a number of trainings, some of which are already scheduled. We will be having a week-long training sometime, I believe, in April, where, you'll get an intensive organizing training to learn how to make change, like, in your community. And we'll also be doing a number of 3-day trainings. We have a movement politics training scheduled. We're going to continue to build the strength and capacity of our chapters and our core leaders around the state. And then we also plan to work to shift the dominant narrative. So that means changing the public opinion landscape so that it helps to advance our agenda and build our organization by recruiting people into our movement and raising money for the organization to be able to be expanded in its capacity to create change. So our work to shift the dominant narrative is our work around relations to the press. We're planning to get a lot better at that in 2018 so that we can change the narratives around things like the $15 minimum wage, saying that it's something that kills jobs in Maryland, to putting forward a more true narrative about the benefits that it has for regular working class people. We have to go toe to toe in a battle of ideas with those who have the reins of power in our state currently, and who say that the things that we want, like single payer healthcare, like free and fair election systems, they say that these things aren't possible. And they tell the people of our state that they can't have any of this stuff. And so we have to go toe to toe with them through the press and through social media and all of our avenues to communicate to the public, to let them know that there's a movement building. All right, so the last thing I'll be getting into is perhaps the most crucial, and it's what a lot of this work builds into. We need to win governing power in the state of Maryland. And what's core to Progressive Maryland's vision and mission and our purpose is the need to be able to have people in power who are acting in the interest of regular, everyday working class people in our state, who are acting in the interest of changing our economy, changing our criminal justice system, and the system that is, robbed so many people of their potential for their lives in this state. And so we need to win governing power in 2018. And what that looks like, we're running candidates, something that Alexis can talk about more later, up and down the ballot. We want our members to run for office, and we want our members and progressives around the state to run effective campaigns in order to win the power to make these changes. And so that goes from races for central committee to school board to, delegate, senate, whatever. We need to be contesting for power next year. And lastly, so I mentioned those more down ballot races, but we can't ignore the fact, and we are prioritizing, that there's going to be a gubernatorial election in 2018. And we have a rare opportunity for a populist progressive to be able to break through in 2018. For a long time, there has not been such an open gubernatorial race, in the primary particularly. There's no clear front runner in this race. And I think many pundits at the state level would even agree with me that this primary is wide open. And if we can organize as progressives to get a progressive governor elected, we can be very powerful in this state. And I think we should take advantage of this moment to get a progressive governor elected. And I have a few slides going into some of our analysis on this. So in 2014, you all know, we elected Larry Hogan, somebody who has not been with our agenda and who has not been someone who, cares about working class people in Maryland and has catered more so to the business interests of our state and has held back progress for many things. Next year, we'll be looking at overriding his veto of paid sick leave legislation. So, this is not someone who's an ally, but how did he get there? 2014, one of the big stories was that our voters stayed home. People who would have voted for him, our progressive candidate, did not turn out to vote in the same way as those who chose to vote for Larry Hogan. I mean, I think that's pretty simple math right there. And what was some of the factors behind that? Republicans in the state, conservatives who supported Larry Hogan, were a lot more satisfied with their candidate than Democrats. So you see here, 82% net satisfaction. Compare that to the Democrats with their nominee, you see a 59% net satisfaction. This is taken from the Washington Post poll done soon after the election. So what happened in 2014 is that, and frankly, I think it was like a precursor to 2016, where we saw Trump elected, is that there was not a candidate on the Democratic side, on the progressive side, to go head to head with Larry Hogan, who could capture the energy and the excitement of a progressive base in the state, and who could motivate people to come out and vote with an agenda focused on what people in our state need and what people in our state want. And so we lost. However, we have another opportunity to take back power in Maryland in 2018, but it'll only happen if we're very organized. So I believe one of the last things I'll hit on is just a few of the top line metrics for how we get to this point. So here are some of our power goals for the 2018 primary. So first and foremost, we need to make sure that a motivating, inspiring candidate actually makes it out of the primary. On December 11th, we're still scheduling our board meeting. Many of you will have an opportunity to vote on an endorsement for such a candidate. And we can talk more about that later as well. But we need to make sure that the primary process for the Democrat actually produces a strong progressive. To do that, we need to mobilize at least 1,000 volunteers to elect our candidates, both up and down the ballot. And we need to make over 100,000 door knocks and phone calls and talk to over 15,000 voters in 2018 in order to have the kind of impact that we need to have to change the outcome of this primary. If we're able to do that behind a progressive candidate, I have no doubt in my mind that that candidate would likely win. And then we need to not only do that in the gubernatorial race, but we need to elect candidates who are committed to our platform and our ideas up and down the ballot. And we'll be talking about our platform that is closely in alignment with our national organization, People's Action, about the type of platform that we'll be asking candidates to commit to. And we'll be discussing this at our board meeting in the next few weeks. So that is it right here. And I think I went on probably long enough. And I'm sorry that I couldn't make it to talk to you all this evening in person or even by webinar live, but appreciate you all for all the work that you're doing, and I'll pass it on now. And I'll stop recording.